Hey everyone, welcome back to Umineko. This is going to be the last video on this. Or at least these first four chapters, episodes, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Man, everything went crazy at the end there. Took about a week or so just to really gather my thoughts on everything. To make sure I don't say something stupid. Which I'm going to because, my god, the ways I have to explain everything going on is just absolutely unfucking real. Because otherwise it's impossible. So, might as well start with the nitty-gritty stuff and go ahead and kill him. I want to see how he died. Missing, went to hell embraced by the witch, but to the witch that hell was the golden land. Okay. Sure. That's something. Tips. Beatrice's title ended witch. So it can be said she wields 2 compendiums. Realization of magic. She technically shouldn't be referred to as either the Endless or the Golden Witch, but by a new title that is a fusion of the two. What the hell? Grimoire, simply put, any magical compendium. It is said that today the most famous grimoire in history has a history of over 2,000 years, is still in circulation, acquiring new alliance members. It is forbidden to speak the true name of that grimoire, so it's simply called Book. Thanks, Book. The foundation that gives birth to magic, and it indicates a system through which magical power can be gained automatically by sharing, for which is committing one's magical compendium to paper and leaving it behind for future generation. That becomes a grimoire. However, the more fearsome the power of a magical compendium, the harder it is to comprehend and share with others. Easily learned magical power may be easy to share, but such magic compendiums are doomed to end up as little more than good luck charms that are eventually forgotten. The essence of sorcery is maintaining a balance between these two outcomes when leaving a magical compendium behind for later generations. Oh, the word in fucking French that I don't feel like reading. Regarding witches. Definition of a witch is vague, but according to generally accepted theory, one becomes a witch at the moment they gain possession of a power surpassing the boundaries of humans that they can use at will. The world or fragment in which they can use their power freely is known as their territory. Most witches cannot leave their territory at will, but those who can travel across the world, the fragments, are called voyagers. In the story, Bern and Lambda Delta belong to this special category. Yeah, I was gonna say they're supposed to be like voyagers or whatever. Worlds of different fates and circumstances called fragments. Yeah, we saw a glimpse of those fragments in Higurashi. Capable of crossing the ocean of endless fragments are called voyagers. It is also the title used to indicate a high-power witch, high-order witch, and witches limited to their own territories cannot compare to their power. However, perhaps because they don't have well-defined territories of their own, their values are ever-changing, and it's easy for their souls to become vague and insubstantial. It isn't uncommon for this to result in them turning into scraps of seaweed in this fragment ocean and fading away. Their voyage is no destination. You might even say they're on a journey to escape a destination, which is of an even higher order than voyagers are called creators. They can give birth to one from zero. Interesting. Yeah, Maria is supposed to be one of those. All creators fear that the destination of their own journey is becoming a creator. As to they would fear advancing to the status of a higher order being. Only themselves can comprehend the answer. Why would you fear that, though? I'd want to be better than what I was. Sure, fuck it. Yeah, I'll deal with all the humans later. But yeah, God, these fucking sisters are just absolutely. I don't know what to think of them, honestly. They kind of are annoying. And this is the one that died, apparently. A weapon of the sisters, cavalry, which serves Pendragon 556, was quiet and often teased, but she was loved by everyone. However, her luck was always bad, and she met a tragic end in a battle against the Black Witch. She was a cutting-edge weapon unique in the Sisters' cavalry, which tended to serve as honor guards. She was in charge of the squad fire support. She shot not to kill, but to protect her allies. A quiet girl who's always teased by everyone, but that's because everyone loves her. The trumpet is her specialty. Everyone skips to her lovely tune. Sure, you do you. This whole magic thing. There's definitely two different kinds. Like, they touched upon it, like the white magic and black magic. And Angie was really, focusing on that aspect. But I think it's going to be a major part of this story, because we see, Maria's shift, which, understandably, she had a really shitty thing happen to her. But it's very interesting that it's setting this up, that there's two kinds of magic, that, there's the white magic that, isn't there to harm people and all that, and then the black magic that's there to kill people, or, make them suffer. It's very interesting that it's setting up this way. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think about that. Because on one hand, yeah, I would welcome a white magic, but the problem is once you let that in, you have to also accept the darker aspects to it, because that's just what happens. Anything gets corrupt. Anything that can be corrupt will be corrupted. That's my new law that I'm creating. So it's just bound to happen. And I'd rather see that. I want to say I'd rather just not have magic in general, and just say fuck it, just get rid of magic, we don't need it. But the problem is some people want it / need it, or they feel that they need it. And that's where the problem comes. Because if I were to say deny that, it's also denying their right to happiness, their right to whatever they want. And I don't think I have that right to do that. So it's a hard position I'm put in. For me personally, I don't believe in magic and etc. in this story. But I don't know if I should deny it for everyone else, though. That's the problem I'm going to come into. Because I don't think I should. Like, would I deny Maria's magic? No. She should be entitled to it. I don't think it's fair to take that away from her. I think it's just cruel and abhorrent to even try it. And I think that's where I'm going to land on magic. I think it's good and bad. It has its perks, it has its drawbacks, like anything. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to see how it develops, how magic is going to take this turn. Because, again, if it just stayed the good stuff, on the good half, I'd keep it. I'd just say, you know what, this is a good thing, and let's just keep it. Because that's all it needs, right? But, of course, this is a story that can't just be cut and dry. It's constantly having two sides to everything. Everything has two sides in this story. That's what I'm finding out. Good and bad magic. All that stuff. Red text versus white text. What can you believe, what can't you believe? Magic versus reality. A good witch versus a bad witch. All this stuff. It's a constant setup that it's a reoccurring theme that it's, two things that are being compared and contrasted. Rosa, the difference between a woman and a mother that she set up herself. That kind of thing. It's this constant battle between two different natures that are inherently the same thing, but they're just two different sides of it. And I think that's an extreme. The fact that it's mirrored in so many different things, it means it's a very major theme that's going on here. Furniture versus humans. Humans versus witch. All these different things that are fundamentally the same thing are being pitted against each other. for, compare and contrasting. It's very interesting the way it's being set up. Because when we first got into it, we saw that Burn and Lambda Delta seemed to be against each other. Or that, like, Burn was solely on our side, but I don't know. They're playing their own fucking game. They don't give a fuck about us. Well, they care as far as the game is concerned, but they don't actually care about the person behind it. So we see that, what we viewed as the good person, the good witch, or the good ally, the good overseer, is really just, fuck them. I don't give a fuck. I'm just doing this to win. And Lambda Delta, who we saw as the enemy, quote unquote, doesn't really see that way either. It's more just, we're doing what we want. And so it's very interesting, the way that's set up. And it just shows that even though these two witches that seem completely opposite of each other, are actually a hell of a lot more similar than each other. Shannon and Kanon are another one of those pairs that are opposites of each other. It's very, very interesting. At least I think it's interesting. But other than that, for the witch stuff, Gap was introduced. That was interesting. No idea who that's supposed to be turned out to be. Because we already know Ronave is apparently Genji. The teacher was Kumasawa. Because we saw her change over. I don't know who Gap's going to represent. I mean, I'd assume some female servant. Because we already have... Or it has to be a servant, because the two other people that we see as servants are witches. So that would lead me to assume as well that Beatrice is a servant. Again, this is just going off of what we've seen through the... how magic relates to the real world. And if that is the case, that would also mean that the Seven Sisters would be servants. Maybe even the sisters are 3/4 servants. I don't know why. I'd believe that the servants, with the sisters, would be servants way faster than the sisters. So I'm not sure about that one, at least. Actually, wait. The 56, she died to the witch, the Black Witch. And it's a trumpet that she played. These are the, fuck, I don't... Oh, the name of them is eluding me, what the actual name. They're the forest animals that Maria had. That's what they are. That's their physical representation in the real world. So all these things are mirrored off of real world things. Because Rosa did break one of those and threw it against the wall. And it was the one that had a trumpet, I do believe. Haha. Damn, that just came to me. I didn't think about that, actually. Interesting. So, at least the sisters, the rabbit sisters, fuck it, for lack of a better word, are actually just physical representations of the little dolls that Maria had, her little toys, or I don't even know what the fuck you would call them, figures that Maria had. Interesting. Which means all these do have Sakataru, real world, and the magical world. All of them are mirrored into it. Well, I doubt goats are. I think they're just brainless things that are just there. So now the question is, who does Gap represent? I imagine, again, the Seven Sisters, I assume, are going to just be regular servants, because I haven't seen anything that would lend me to believe that I don't believe they're actually modeled after just iron stakes. I think they're modeled after a person. I'd imagine, at least. Gap, I don't know who she would represent. I'm sure we'll be introduced to her later in the story, if we haven't been already. Because any good mystery, you can't just leave things. You can't show something and then just completely ignore it and act like it doesn't exist, because that's just shitty writing. So that will definitely be touched upon probably later. Interesting. I'm glad I noticed that. So that just reinforces, the real world and the physical, and how things that happen in the physical world impact the real world, the magical world. And I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. That's definitely an overarching theme that I'm going to have to keep in mind moving forward. Because I don't want to miss any, really important themes and just, brush over and say, oh, well that doesn't fucking matter. You can't really... Any major themes you can't just ignore. That's just something you just can't. That's the whole point of said theme, is to... Well, that's the whole point of a narration, a narrative, a story, a piece of literature. It's to tell a story. So getting rid of, something major in it that really drives the plot of it, or, at least as a common talking point, you can't... It's just bad. It's just bad to do. So I'm not going to ignore certain aspects of the story, or at least major aspects. I'm not going to. And if I do start, neglecting something, make sure to remind me and be like, hey, don't be a fucking idiot. Pay attention to this. Remember how they had this huge ass conversation about this? So make sure to remind me, just in case I do that. I doubt I will, but just in case. Because I don't want to sell anything short. I really don't. I really, really don't. That would be a huge disservice. Then let's go to the world of 1998, I think. Can I kill her? No. Even though technically she did die. Apparently. Oh, Angie. I don't know what to think about her. It's very interesting. Oh, actually her comparison to Maria. And how they have a very similar... Or the way they act is similar in the same way that it's completely different how they view everything. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as well for another two people that are extremely similar but also appear to be extremely far apart. And it's very interesting. I enjoy her character. I was going... she's a bit rough around the edges, but that's honestly to be expected. But I don't think she's an inherently horrible person. I think she's, a damaged girl. Didn't have a very nice family to grow up to. Because, she just had Ava. And, that's awkward. And I don't blame her at all. I don't blame her for, saying, like, oh, where's my parents? That is a very natural response, and I don't think she should feel guilty for saying that. I think that whole part was a bit of a bit, I don't know how the best word to describe it, because I don't want to misspeak. For lack of a better term, I would say just a missed opportunity for her, at least. Or, just overly apologetic of her nature. I don't think she had to apologize for saying something unnaturally, an 8-year-old girl, 7, 6, because she's younger than Maria, so she has to be younger than 9. I mean, I think it's completely natural for her to say that. And I think it's unreasonable to expect her to apologize for it or feel guilty for it. That's just, I disagree with that completely. I think she was perfectly in her mind to say, yeah, where's my parents? Where's her brother? Because Ava did kill at least one of them. So, to feel guilty over that, she obviously doesn't know the truth. Ava does. So I think that's just unnatural. Or unnaturally cruel to her to make her, feel remorseful for that. I don't think it gains anything to dwell on the past in such a different way, or such an important way like that. But of course, and then we have to talk about Battler's Sin, and that's clearly on the past, but that's for much later in said video. It's gonna already be a longer video, because I have to explain everything, and ooh, man, that's going to hurt my head. Thank God I don't have to talk about the epitaph, though. Fucking bless. I think that's all I wanted to say. Oh, Kasumi is a fucking scumbag who I hope rot in hell. Because there's no forgiveness there. There's no reasonable answer to be that much of a bitch. I mean, I don't care how bad your life is. There's just no tearing out that whole, like, oh, page about Maria's happiness and, being happy with her mom. That's just too far. Too fucking far. There's a point that you just cross as a human being that you honestly, you have to wonder if they even are human. You just have to ask that question, that are these people actually people? Or do they just act like they're human? I mean, it's just absolute waste of a fucking corpse. Waste of fresh air, waste of water, waste of food, drain on us. That pisses me off. People like that are the fucking worst. There's no point, there's no gain. It's just disgusting. So anyways, now let's talk about what I've been doing for a while. So the whole argument of Kenzo. This is going to be a massive shift in gears, by the way. Because now I'm going to actually talk about how many people I think are on the island. I don't think it's 17. And this is where bullshit comes in, right? Because it's fucked. So, we talk about Kenzo not existing on this island, and he's clearly dead. He's stated in red, he's dead. Him being dead and lowering the number to no more than 17, so let's go ahead and I'm going to execute everyone. And anyone who I can determine is alive on said island gets to be resurrected. And this is where it gets extremely interesting, because it's a lot of circumstantial evidence, I'll be honest. But I've been reasoning for why some people have to be alive and why some people might not have to actually be alive or be on said island. So, the way I approach this is going through the obvious way of saying, okay, I just have to prove these people are alive by going off the game board and proving that they were on that island. That's how I prove that these people existed on the island on that day and are individual people. Because, there's the whole, like, oh, no one dressed like Kanon. Or no one, could be mistaken for Kenzo. So, I begin. So the first people I can reasonably assume existed on said island, without much speculation, is the person who claims to be Battler, Kyrie, Rudolph, Rosa, and Maria. Just right off the bat, I'll just go ahead and get everyone that I do believe is on said island. Just immediately. Just from this episode alone, I can glean that these 8 people are alive no matter what. Because, I also am using a little bit of information from episode 1, but let's go on. Maria, we found parts of her skull, and that's what it was, dental records show that they mentioned that in the very first one. I remember that because it was odd that you would do that. I'm still wondering what the fuck's going on with that island. Anyways, so we understand that Maria is alive on said island. To have Maria, you have to have an adult to give birth to Maria. So Rosa has to exist. Maria's not making this trip on her own to said island. She's 9 years old. We understand that Battler, Kyrie, and Rudolph were on the island because Angie, who is not on said game board in the future, recognizes these people as not on the island. This is her perspective, and her point of view is extremely, extremely helpful when finding out who is on the island and who isn't. It's very reliable when it comes to this, because it's not tainted by anything. So her, objective view of what happened on said island is extremely important. So her knowing that her parents died and Battler died, that gleams that those 3 people are alive. And the fact that Ava made it back and, mourned at the funeral for Hideyoshi and George it's understood that both of them existed as well on said island. Her going into Nanjo's, what's-his-face, his son, seeing him, he knows he exists. We know that Kumasawa exists as well on said island. So we're up to a decent amount of people that are already, alive, just from the 4th episode that I'm using this from. And the point of this is to show which people can and can't be on the island or have to be on said island. These are the people that have to be there so far. Episode 2, we go into it. We see that Jessica is interacting with people at her school. This is off the game board. This is also 2 days before however many days before the game board. So I can reasonably assume she exists. When she exists, her parents exist because by default they have to. And we saw that someone did recognize or acknowledge Kanon. So we know that he at least is a person that is alive. Then this is where we get into the hard part, because servants are really hard to prove if they exist or not. I went through all of George and Shannon's dialogue when the 2nd episode. I wanted to see if she was proven as an existence, because it's really easy. If someone just said, hey, you dropped this or something, touched her or acknowledged her in any way that isn't, suspicious, then I could have assumed that, she was there. She wasn't. She never did get that. So it's definitely suspicious in my eyes. Goto used to work with something. If I'm going to believe the narration of, across the Natsui, they used to work somewhere else, I'm willing to believe it. I'm going to say he exists. The last 3 people that I know Kenzo doesn't. Genji, I just can't prove it because he never leaves the island. Nothing. Actually, wrong. I can prove he exists. Because the boatman proved his existence. Because he talked to him. He talked to Genji. I do believe he either talked to Genji or Kenzo. I'm going to say it was Genji. I do believe it was Genji. It would make sense. I do believe. Regardless, it's really hard to prove he exists because he just doesn't leave. He's really, really hard to prove he exists. So, and I am to doubt everything, so I can... If worst came to worst, I would just say that Genji doesn't exist, but I'm willing to stake it that he does. This is where mindfuck starts to begin. We've already established with taking the name of Kenzo, you inherit the name of Kenzo. And that thing worked. Then we also got the read about basically no one else can go by the name Kanon except, his body. And, or the person. This is a very interesting difference they've written in the sand, basically. And I'm saying this to the sand even though it's red, because it's a very odd way to phrase it, because I mentioned this beforehand, but when they mentioned with Kenzo, no one would confuse him for anyone else, they didn't say that about Kanon. No, they could just be saying, it's implied that, it would be the exact same red, but they didn't state it the same. That's the important thing. So that theoretically means someone could also pass as Kanon. I think this is an extremely important hint, an important tool. The next thing comes from the idea that I cannot trust the narrator at all. And I actually don't. At least when it comes to the game board. Anything involved with the game board I can't trust because it shows magic. It shows magic occurring willy-nilly. It just shows everything. That's what it wants to show me. The question is what's really going on. There's no way for me to prove what's really going on, so I just have to doubt. And that's just it. That's just how it works. I can be reasonably assured that Shannon is Beatrice. I am good. In fact, I am so certain I can declare it in red that Shannon is Beatrice. I am at such a high percentage. I mean, I was already like in the high 90% chance that Shannon was Beatrice, but I'm 100% certain now. Because of this sin talk, I went back and looked through everything, any text that could be referred to as a sin, because the red flashing words at the very end of the episode went, "Please kill me quickly, try and stop me. If you aren't coming back, I'd rather have never been born. Why am I unable to love anyone? Something, I'm begging you, no matter how it ends, kill me. If you're in my tale. If you don't, then I'll kill you. Then you will die. Not I will kill you, just you will die." I think this is extremely important for various things. It shows that, one, I think the sin has to do with him coming back. I think him not coming back is the sin, because it causes her to basically want to kill herself or die. As Beatrice says, it wasn't against her, and that she didn't exist during, 6 years ago or whatever. However many years it was, 6 years ago. If that is the case, it has to be Beatrice. Shannon, fuck. Shannon has to be Beatrice, because we did get a line of, I'll see you again, or something like that. Something along those lines. He said, like, and, Battler saying, like, his first love was, Shannon. If the feelings are mutual, this further implies that Shannon is Beatrice. If I'm going to follow these steps. If you last love that, he loved her, quote unquote, it's child love. I'll see you again. Or something along those lines. I'm not sure the exact words. I just skimmed through it and I saw that, something see you again. And this goes directly hand in hand with the coming, if you aren't coming back. When I think in the first episode when she first saw him, before all the she just walked in and saw him, and, like, she started blushing. That implies that she still has feelings for him. I wouldn't be surprised if she had feelings for him, and so on and so forth. And this is his sin. Which, promising to come back and not coming back, yeah, it's kind of fucked. But to kill people, I don't know if that's good enough to be a sin. But I'm not the person it was made towards, so I can't tell. I can't. Not my call to make. I can only just say that I personally wouldn't take it as hard. I'm used to people lying, so I don't take it as personally. But again, I'm not Shannon. And knowing this, the fact that they say, oh, Beatrice didn't exist by that point, it implies that she does exist now. Or at least it's not implies, it basically states that she exists now. If Beatrice exists now, and it doesn't, change anything, and, it's not an extra person, it implies that, personalities are beings inside of bodies. See, this is the problem I'm going to have. It's the definition of person, definition of being, a definition of body. All of these different things have there's either loose definitions or very specific definitions of what makes a body, what makes a person, what makes a personality different than a person. Oh, it's so much to go on. Because, like, would you say that a person with multiple personalities or split personalities is more than one person? If someone has, 8 personalities, would you say, oh, that's 8 people there, or 9 people, if you include the body? No. It's just one person. But it's still it's different people inside of their head. And that's what I think is going on here. I think Beatrice is Shannon and Shannon is Shannon. Meaning that Shannon has more than one personality floating around in her head. This creates the idea that she can be declared and read to be dead while still being alive. And I think that is what happened in the parlor. It was stated she was dead. She wasn't dead. Her personality of Shannon was killed. Thus, she can fake her death. Or Beatrice, theoretically, can fake her death. Now, it's important that I don't do this just to everyone. I have to have clear motives of why I believe this is happening. And that, I'll touch on this later. But I think there is enough circumstantial evidence to point to the idea that this is what's going on. That they have multiple personalities. Again, if I am on the right track, don't tell me. I don't want to know. So, I don't care how right or wrong I am. I don't care. Just say, oh, interesting theory. Or, wow, you're fucking stupid. I appreciate those, by the way. And so I think it's important that, just to keep that in mind, no spoilers, fuck off. If you do, you just get done. It's a zero tolerance policy. You're fucking done. Use Rod 13 if you want to. There's no excuse. You're fucking done. No fucking forgiveness. No oops, I didn't mean to. It's just a fucking shame. Because if I don't, stay strict on it, people will, skirt around the edges. So, I cut it off right then and there. Anything that I deem as anything that I don't know or I don't have knowledge of, that is a spoiler. It's punished. That's just how things are. It's how things are going to be. So far, it's been really good. So far, I haven't had to do that. But, just in case, I just want to let people know. And if it's your personal idea, if you're going through this with me, just go ahead and say, oh, in my personal opinion, I think this is happening. And give your reasonings. Why? I love seeing those. I love having different ideas floating around. Because it's always great to have, a different angle, a different idea of something that's happening or going on. Anyways, so the reason I think that there are different personalities going on is because, one, Beatrice saying that she didn't exist at some point. That means she existed on another point. Okay, so it's boom, boom, done. That would imply that the person who becomes Beatrice solves the epitaph. That's when, quote, Beatrice is born. They solve the epitaph at some point before this family conference, and that's why they, quote unquote, inherit the name of Kinzo, the next head. And it would also give a good reason of why they know, they would put up that if you solve the epitaph, you're done. You don't die. Because they would know when someone solved it or not. Their goal isn't money, because they don't need money, because they've already solved it. They're the head. It seems to be solely on revenge. Or at least grief, or something along those lines. Despair. Over Battler's sin. I think that's the main reason this thing is happening. Or no, it isn't. I don't think it is the main reason things are happening. It's a type of revenge or grief over everything that Battler has done. In regards that, lying, that he'd come back and see her, but he doesn't come back. Now the interesting part, and where I basically sound like I'm on crack, and I swear to God, I'm not high right now. I think that Kanon and Shannon share a body. Now it's the fun part of explaining this. So I've already established that I don't believe their narration. Whenever we see them, they're usually both alone by themselves. Very rarely are they in front of other people together. And when they are, it's usually when a magical scene is occurring, or in the first episode, which was entirely from Battler's perspective. Battler is a fucking idiot. I don't trust him at all. We also don't even, I was about to say we don't know if he's Battler, but we obviously know he's Battler. There's a lot of things we didn't know at that point. Magic was, kind of happening around as well. I don't trust his perspective. I think it's unreliable. He's a piece on the game board, and we can't trust anything on the game board. We've already established that. And why I don't trust the game board. So that's the only time that they're actually seen together outside of a magical scene. Because every other time we see the prison, it's a fuck ton of magic's happening right there. And also the servant scene. They were seen together. But it was also during a magic scene. Whenever they're seen together and it's not a magical scene, it's usually when they're by themselves. Or when it'll describe Shannon or Kanon comes out of a dark shadow or whatever. And, he was hiding in the shadows and stuff like that. It's very suspicious the way it's set up that way. Because if they weren't the same person, what would the point of hiding it be? What would be the point of trying to throw people off? Because it's an extremely odd thing to say, I'll admit it. I've been wanting to come up with something else that explains everything that's going on without having to rely on this. Trust me. Because it's just, there's too much things that I need to solve that it's impossible to solve without it. Though, I say impossible, it's extremely, extremely unlikely to solve without it. So the whole idea that they always talk with each other, they're always, seen together, the whole, brother-sister relationship that they have with each other, their names are extremely similar. They kind of look similar, kinda. I mean, a resurrector. I mean, their eye color is the same. You can throw on her wig. I mean, the whole question is like, oh, what about her, You can strap her chest down if you really fucking want to. He covers up his thighs so you can't actually tell if he has a tattoo or not. Neither Kanon nor Shannon actually really get physical or intimate with George or Jessica. Shannon slept in a different room than George. And the whole oh, he's just really a gentleman. It's like, let's just say it's beneficial if that is the case. Then the whole question comes in, how do they get away with it? Having different jobs, having different vacation schedules. Well, vacation schedules, you just don't take a vacation. You just stay your same person. You just, change into a different persona. And then call it good. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. It's pretty easy to get by with at least that. But with the actual work schedule, they say Shannon is slacks off her duties or whatever. Well, she's doing the work of 2 servants. Maybe that's why she messes up so much. Or they think her as kind of slow. And if that is the case, then the whole question is, who was the original body? It says Shannon's older. I'd assume Shannon's the original body. I'm not sure, though. I mean, it's hard to fucking tell. I don't know. I'd assume her. Maybe it's canon. Maybe it's not. I think it's kind of irrelevant to argue that point, though. Though I'm sure someone will ask, and I just personally think it's kind of irrelevant at this point. They say they hired Shannon first. Let's assume that, they hired Shannon. And she's the original. Then the question is, why? Why are they the same? I think the trauma of losing their mother... I'll use there. It's a nice neutral because I have no idea who was the first, who's the fake. I think losing their mother probably scarred them for life. They clearly were taken away from said mother and put into an orphanage because she died in a really gruesome way. She was old enough to have children. I don't think she's 16. Shannon is too old to be 16. I think she looks much more the age of, like George. She looks like around the age of George and Battler. So I'd put her more 18, 19, 20, around that age. I really just doubt that she's 16. I think that's just false. Though I think they said that Kanon was 16. I also disagree with that. He looks older. I think that, or did they say he's 14? I'm a little shaky on that. That was the very first episode. It's kind of a while ago. Forgive me. That doesn't matter though, because I think they're old enough that she could have had the child at say 18. And this where is a little fucked up. Kenzo probably isn't the most normal person. Let's just put it that way. He probably had some relations with his daughter of the second Beatrice, because there's two. I can guarantee there's two. The one in the garden is a separate Beatrice than their mother. I think the original Beatrice, that first fell in love, sadly, or kidnapped. I God bless her if she fucking fell in love with her. Someone needs to fucking save her ass. The first one, it's definitely different than the garden and Kuadorian. I am fairly confident in it. Because we saw that, she talked about, her cage of flesh died or, committed suicide at first. But then she was recaptured into another being. That implies that she died, quote unquote. Beatrice died, and then he named Beatrice again. The child that he had with her. I don't know how she died. She either killed herself, maybe died of a natural cause. Whatever, but needless to say, he had an incestual relationship with his daughter, and then gave birth to Shannon/Kanon. This festers as a multiple personality syndrome, because any incestual relationship's gonna have a really small gene pool, and that just fucks you up. Which might explain if they have, an extra toe. Why Kenzo probably has an extra toe, maybe. Let's be honest here. And if that is the case, it would be perfectly reasonable to assume they'd have a mental disorder, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder. It's very, very likely that it would occur from that, because you're just begging for problems when you do that. Not only is it fucking disgusting, but it really is. It's just so anti-nature that animals don't even fucking do it. You just can't do it. It's not worth it. Not worth it. Bad. PSA: don't fuck your daughter. Spoiler alert. It's bad. So then they get put into an orphanage. They succeed. They become a servant. This would fester as a type of resentment towards the family, because it's, oh my god, I am on par with these people, and they're treating me like fucking furniture. They're treating me like trash. And then it festers in them. When they solve the epitaph, I am better than all of them. Why do I have to serve them? Why am I serving them? They fought, well, this is after Battler left, so it's already kind of pissed off that Battler left. So it's, people treating them like, second-class beings. It festers in them as resentment, hatred. And it would be understandable why this stuff would happen. This is all my motives for why they would kill these people as well. Not just the sin, but it's another reason that, you're being put down as you feel unequal to them. And yet you're not even permitted to be at the table. You have to serve these people. And I think that's what is going on, at least on that front. So my main reasons or circumstantial evidence for Kanon and Shannon being one and the same is, first, that it's very, very, it fits very well if they are one person. It really, really does. Everything kind of wiggles into place, I should say. Not even into place. It just it works out enough that it squeezes through all the reds and just stays perfectly put and doesn't move too much. Also, another thing would be the reds that are used that are to confirm Kanon's death are only used when you can't find his body. No one else has that luxury. I've gone through all of them. No one actually really benefits twice from that, where his body, quote unquote, disappears, and he is dead. Then the whole question, and also, if we go back into the third, the murders that happened, deaths, were very, very vague with how they died, because the asking of whether, fuck, I lost my train of thought. Oh, shit. Oh, whether the were all homicides was avoided. But then they said, no one died by suicide. That's important. I don't know what killing yourself personality-wise, killing a personality would be called. Just a death. I don't fucking know. I really don't know. I don't know how I'd describe it. I don't know how I would reason that one out. It's just vague. It's just, yeah, people die. Let's go with that. Because we already know that Kinzo is dead already. Died by natural causes, I assume. I pray. Right? So, it's interesting. It's a very interesting setup. I think that they are one and the same. It would create that again, I touched on these major themes, and this is another reason I think it's a major theme. It would make sense for it to be like that they are one and the same, but yet seemingly two different beings. They seem two different beings, but are indeed one and the same. That's the whole difference here. And I think it would help on the major ideas. Other people that would be needed to sell this would be Kumasawa and Genji, for sure. And this may be why they show up as magical servants. Shannon, probably would dress up as Beatrice to, have fun with Maria. So, that's another thing that could have happened. No, we're not, it's just really vague right now. I'm sure it'll be touched upon later. But I think that it's reasonable to assume that. It would make sense because we never see, Beatrice with Shannon or Kanon outside of a magical scene when she shows up in episode 2. We don't see that happen. We see Genji escort her, and that's it. We don't see them together. And that's what I wanted to see. And it's very, very interesting that didn't happen, because I went back and checked on it. It's why in episode 4 I kept asking and praying that they kill Kanon, but only stated in red. I wanted that, because it would have been the second time, and the first time anything can happen, second time it's probably a coincidence, third time it's going to be, it's intentional. Give me one more and I know for a fact. But the third more came from when Beatrice walked through that entrance hall with only Genji in tow. And everyone else saw him. Rosa saw her, Kyrie saw her, all the siblings saw her in the chapel. None of the servants were there. You never see Kanon and or Shannon outside of a magical scene or outside of them being by themselves together. It just doesn't happen. Because when Beatrice first showed up, it was her talking to herself. This could represent an inner monologue, an inner dialogue between all of her voices attacking and, hitting each other. Because, because it's already said that, she was never born if he doesn't come back. You could have some resentment. If you have multiple personalities, you can't really necessarily control what they think or what they do. So it's also to assume that, hey, maybe she doesn't actually have full control over herself, because that's just what happens. I've already stated this before, but there's cases and, videos of people with multiple personalities. And it's just heartbreaking to see. Like one mother, didn't recognize her daughter. Didn't think that it was her daughter. She thought her daughter had died. That's fucked. That's really just fucked. You can't control that, and you can't really explain it either. And I think that's what's going on. Now moving into the first ones, and this is why I think that it really helps out and really fits. I'm going through all of the episodes, one by one. We start with the first 6 murders, with the people in the rose garden, or rose shed thing, garden house. She was dead. Goto was dead. Rosa was dead. Rest in fucking peace. Rudolph, Kyrie, Kraus, and that's it. That's 6. These 6 people are dead. There's an interesting thing that they started doing and saying like, oh, I don't need to state in red people that get their head half smashed. The idea, I think what they're trying to do here is refer back to all the times that someone had their head half smashed and that, it guarantees their death. I think it's really important to hold them accountable for it and don't let them squirm out in this. That you have to keep them down. Now, I think it's reasonable to assume it. I think it's impossible not to have it work this way. One of the people in the sheds wasn't really dead. We look at the people who were touched or, in some way, shape or form or, really looked at. Battler really looked at Kyrie and Rudolph and really, focused on him. Kraus, he had half his face. The important thing is, George never saw Shannon. The only people who saw Shannon were Hideyoshi and Kanon. It could be that there wasn't a body there. Maybe it was just a sack of fucking potatoes. I don't know. It could have just been nothing there. They really could have just faked it. Just a pile of clothes with some, meat spread over there. A fake body, so to speak. And then, Shannon was quote unquote dead. Now, keeping this in mind, we go into the second Twilight where Hideyoshi and Ava were killed. And, there is a locked room, impossible to get into. There is a chain. A couple things that I actually hadn't really thought of before now. We don't know that the chain necessarily was set in the first place. We have the narrative saying that, we have Kanon saying that, we have Genji saying it. Maybe they didn't set the chain. Maybe they unset it because Kanon said, hey, I have some food for you. They open the door, and then, he kills Ava. Hideyoshi's still in the bathroom. He walks in and kills Hideyoshi. And then cuts the chain and says that's how it was opened. Because if we go back to it, how could someone have possibly painted that thing if the murders had just occurred in like a couple minutes? No one possibly could have painted that as fast. So, and I already suspect Kanon at this point. So I think it's safe to assume that he probably did that. Either that, or he hid in the bedroom. Or Shannon hid in the bedroom. Because I think it's reasonable to assume you would know. I think it's reasonable that you could guess which room they'd be in, or which room they'd go to, especially if Hideyoshi was working with Shannon and Kanon, and saying like, "Oh, your family will be spared. We'll give you some money as well." And he's like, "Oh, cool, thanks. Just let me in when I knock," or something like that. And we can further discuss it. And that's when they betray him in that room. Cut the chain and say it was locked. Because they cut the chain just between the two of them, Genji and Kanon. So we don't know. It could have been faked. And I think it's reasonable to assume that. Also, someone could have just hid in the room, let's be honest here. They could have. No, because I don't think they said a red saying that no one was in that room. Then we go into the next one. The Kanon death. Or, no, they found Kenzo in there. He was already dead, so that doesn't fucking matter. The Kanon one. Ice pick sticking out of his chest. How presumptuous of lowly furniture. The people that helped him would be, Kumasawa, quote-unquote, found him. So they could have mocked up a scene. And Nanja was taking care of him. Jessica also was there. But she's no medical expert. She wouldn't know if he was, like, really badly injured or not. She's just taking Nanja's word for it. And I believe Nanja's in on it. I really, really do. Right now, I think the people who are in on it are Nanjo. The people that are in on it, that understand what's going on. Nanjo, Genji, from game to game. Not necessarily just in episode 1. Nanjo, Genji, Shannon and Kanon, and Kumasawa. Goda, I don't think is involved at all. I think he's too unreliable. They don't really know him well. Goda talks down about Shannon and Kanon as well. While the others don't seem to do that. They kind of just say like, oh, they're themselves, they're there. That kind of thing. They kind of just pass the buck off. And I think it changes also who helps who. Possibly. Because, theoretically, it could also be possible they just didn't set a chain and they just got killed that way. They walked in, killed Ava by shooting her in the head. Hideyoshi's in the shower, he might not have heard it. And then they walk in, it's like, oh, his wife, it'll make me a sandwich. Or, something stupid like that. And then, or, sweet, delicious, snacks. Because Hideyoshi's just hungry. And then he'd kill him in the shower. So I think that's very possible. I'll try to have it without accomplices that are part of the family. But I think it would be easier if Hideyoshi was in on it or Ava was in on it. I'd imagine Hideyoshi. Because, he lied. Because he was by that body. I think it's impossible to have him not be an accomplice. You really need him to help sell it. Moving on. Who's the next one to die? Nanjo. Was it Nanjo? Yeah, Nanjo, Kumasawa, and Genji. Yeah, that's right. And, it was like, oh, someone other than Maria killed him. It's Shannon, or Kanon, that is not actually dead. They probably had, because the guns in Kenzo storage, there's more than one. So they probably had a couple of those. Walked up, killed all of them. Told Maria to turn around, started singing, and lined up these 3 and killed them. Probably would kill Nanjo first, or kill Genji first. Kumasawa, she's not going to do anything. She's just going to, oh, what's going on? What are you doing? I thought we had a deal. That kind of thing. And just cut him down. Natsui was shot other than her gun. There's more than one gun. We've already established this. This thing's well thought out. I wouldn't think that they would not have some guns laid out on the side to deal with this. And then that's how she died. And, shot in the head. Poor Natsui. I feel bad for her. She gets fucked every time. Then we had the people that were left were these guys, and they ended up dying, missing. Devoured by bits, missing. I think they only say missing. I don't think they actually give any real hints. She was then chewed by bits. Oh no. Yeah, I still can't kill a witch. You have the meth in the palm of your hand, though. I doubt you. Yeah, there does exist just one way to kill me. Interesting. So I think that's how you explain all the murders. I think some kind of gas or explosion happens on the island. That's why you could have Battler die when Beatrice isn't on the island. Because, the whole thing, because she did say that, you know, oh, you'll be the only one on this island, and only you can, you know, you'll be dead. You know, I'll kill you even though I'll be dead. So I think it's safe to assume that there's some kind of timer, some kind of explosion, something that kills you at the end, which is why that would happen that way. Moving on to episode 2, we had the first 6 chapel rooms where everyone fucking died. It's very, very gruesome. I can be safe to assume there's no fake body here. Everyone died, legitimately. The question comes, how do you lock the door? I don't know if they did lock the door. They could have lied to Rose and say, oh, it's locked, and, you know, she put the key and turned it, maybe thinking it's locked. You know, because she's never probably unlocked the chapel in the first place. So, her unlocking it would be, interesting. Because we saw the adults go in there in the first place. We don't know if it was necessarily locked from the time after the murder, you know, to that morning. We only can assume because, you know, that's what the servants told Rosa. Said, oh, Rosa, it's locked. We've already tried this door, you know. You know, like shake the door a little bit, acting like it's locked. And, you know, tell her to go get the key. She gets the key. She, quote unquote, unlocks it because she thinks it's locked. And then nothing there. And that's how you get that locked room. Then moving on, we have Kanon and Jessica's mysterious death. Kanon killed Jessica. I think that's just... I'll just go with that. Oh yeah, you know, you can't find his corpse, but he's dead. Trust me, he's dead. I think that's just... He quote-unquote died. You know, became Shannon or, you know, or whatever. Because going into Kinzo's study wouldn't have really mattered. But then the question is, why would Rosa say that, you know, she talked with Kinzo if he's already dead? Maybe at that point, Shannon, like, said, oh, by the way, I'm actually, you know, the next head. And it's like, oh, well, fuck me. Maybe that's what happened. In that room, I'm not sure what happened. We will never know what happened. Or, you know, maybe after writing his will, that's what they talked about. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, he was missing. Because I don't know. I don't know. That's another thing that's kind of questionable. I don't want to suspect Rosa. I really, really don't. I think it can work without her being suspect. It's just that she just has to be a little stupid sometimes. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I don't love her. So if that is the case, it would be Genji and Shannon, you know, or just by themselves basically. Go in, Master Key kills, what's his face, or kills Jessica, and, you know, kills Kanon, quote unquote, and then puts the Master Key on the door, locks the door, and then we leave. Because that would mean Shannon technically would have 2 on her body, but it's still 1 per servant in that instance. Then we have the 3 people that were murdered in the room, or 2 people murdered in the room, and it was Kumasawa and Nanjo. If it is just them, and, you know, with Goda in that room, you know, they recognize Kanon. Shannon still could appear to be like Kanon. And while they're stunned, they end up killing him. And, you know, they tell Goda that, oh, it's magic or whatever. You know, say it's magic or you're gonna die. And then he goes along with it because that's all he can do. They force his hand. They lock the door with the master keys because that's the only way to do it after moving the bodies out. You know, stake them and all that good stuff outside of that room. And then we have the triple deaths in that room with Shannon, Goda, and George. I do believe it's a double murder homicide, suicide, or a double, you know, it's homicide and double suicide. I think it's reasonable to assume they killed Goda first. Goda was the first to die after they locked the door. The door's locked, and this is what creates the locked room. And with this being said, as it's locked, there's only certain ways to open it. So with, I don't think Rosa could have left that room. It said Battler went to sleep. I don't trust it. It's too unreliable if you're Rosa to assume, and you also have to time it perfectly that he just happened to go to sleep when they just happened to be in that room. I think it's really, really unlikely, really, really uncertain, and really, really just unreliable, and something I wouldn't trust even if I was a culprit trying to kill a bunch of people. It's uncertain, and why wouldn't she just kill Battler? Just kill him. Fuck it. No, she doesn't want to murder in front of Maria, but she'd still be down with killing other people? No, I just don't see it. I simply don't see it at all. Now, how would Shannon get rid of said weapon that killed her? I think it was probably some kind of contraption, maybe some sort of setup. Because I think the same thing would be used in the 4th episode, where how she was killed, but there was no weapon around. Because I think she was the last to die. She probably killed herself in front of that well to set the scene perfectly. I don't know, maybe some weapon, maybe well, the windows were closed, so you couldn't do it out the window. Yeah, like I said, she might have maybe sat on the gun, like when she slumped over, it fell on her, like her skirt fell onto it. Something along those lines. I'm not sure exactly, but I think she killed herself. And I think it's safe to assume that, timer goes off, everyone else dies. And that's just how that's how you die. Missing. Afterwards, she's chewed to a pulp and went to hell. Poor Rosa. Feel bad for her. Damn. And I'm just seeing if there's anything else there. Oh yeah, she has that form. But we never saw her actually with someone else. Like with the servants around her known about. Very interesting. Then we go into episode 3. Episode 3 rolls along, and this is where we start getting interesting. We had the chain murders of all the servants. And Kenzo. The people that could have been faked are only a couple people. Kumasawa could have faked it. Goto couldn't. Genji couldn't. Genzo couldn't. If we're going along these lines again, if like with the chapel, it could have been reasonable to assume that maybe, she left the parlor, went to the chapel because it would have been the last door. The Lord's Brusher's place. Oh, Lord Urshiramiya. There you go. Interesting. I just read that. Interesting. So it could be that she went to the chapel. It wasn't locked. Because there were no reds saying that, the chapel door was locked. All these rooms were locked doors or something like that. No way exists to enter and exit them. At the time, something along those lines. Even if it was locked, you leave it unlocked. Actually, no, what you do is you leave it unlocked. You go in and lock it from the inside. Because you might be able to do that on that door. Because I think it's that there exists no way to unlock it except with the key. But I think you can unlock it, or you can lock it from the inside. Because every door has a way to lock it from the inside. That's just how doors work. So I think that could have happened. She faked her death, got up once everyone left. Waddled all the way over to the chapel, closed the door, changed clothes. And faked her death in there. Because you would assume that it's going to take a while. Because the rooms were really spread out. So you have a lot of time to screw around with it. And I think that's how you solve that room. That closed your mystery. And then that way also, not all of them are homicides. And we go in, then it's Rosa's death and Maria's death. 2 deaths that you can be confirmed that you don't need red. A hole through her fucking neck. You can't really fake that. Maria being strangled, can't fake that. Well, you can, but it's, for a child to do it, it's very unlikely. Ava did these. I think it's reasonable to assume that. And this is where it's interesting because, we still have, fake, or Beatrice theoretically, or one of the personalities of Kanon or Shannon running around right now. Or not necessarily running around, but somewhere. Maybe, well, she'd have to go back to the parlor to act as Shannon's body. Because, she might have seen, like, George going that way, so she quickly ducked in, put on her clothes and whatever, or took off her clothes. If, she put Kanon's on top of hers. And then, faked her death again, and then ended up killing George. When she, quote-unquote, came back to life. Or maybe he walked in when she was still alive. He's like, oh, what the fuck's going on? Then kills her. Well, kills him. Writes those numbers on the door. Because Beatrice made the promise that, no more killings. Maybe they use that as payment. Or, well, if we go back here, execute him. In exchange for his soul, the witch gave 8 numbers. This implies that he wasn't intentionally, he was in an accident to be killed, meaning that George probably walked in on something he shouldn't have saw, so she had to kill him. Sucks to be him, but that's just what happened. So then we move into Hideyoshi, Kyrie, and Rudolph's murder. I think what happened, Hideyoshi shot Rudolph, hit him in the head, killed him. At that point, Kyrie got his gun, or got her gun. They both fired simultaneously and hit each other. Kyrie is bleeding out because that looks a hell of a lot bigger of a wound than that. And she shot him in the chest, and in that way, they all 3 died. And I think that's what happened. Though, of course, he died, his chest pierced by a stake-shaped weapon. I think Beatrice, walked along and being like, oh, here, have some steaks. Because there were no stakes on this one. Because there shouldn't have to be. And maybe they walked along, saw those bodies, heard gunshots, and was like, ooh, I got some stakes to place. And then put them there. Opportunistic as fuck, but it works. Can I kill her? No. And then the next ones were Cross and Natsui, strangled to death. Again. I think that Ava did that. Probably drugged him in some way, shape, or form. Drug him out there, left him out there. Killed him. And that's probably Shannon, staking him. And then after she was, put out there, or both of them were put out there, probably staked him, was going back into the parlor room. And that's when George walked in. And probably knows she either wasn't there or, still, you're just walking up or walking around. Or she might have killed George, went outside, and saw those bodies and it's like, fuck, I screwed up. Locked that door, wrote the numbers down, staked the last 2, and then ended that one. Then we go into the final where Nandra was killed. In the way, in the very end, the witch didn't let him survive. She shoots him. Done and done. That's how you explain that one. She lived to the very end because she got to Kuwadori, and that's why I think it's some kind of explosion or something. And that's what allows these people to live. Or, get away or something like that. Maybe gas, even though gas would be overused at that point. And then we go into the 4th one where... God, I've been talking for so fucking long. This is just how I explain everything. Oh, fuck. I hurt so much. So I don't think that these bodies were technically died at the time that they said they were. Because it just doesn't make sense for it to happen that way. He died. Because we saw Maria, curled up with her mother. I think that I don't think a killer would put her body there. I think, Maria went to the dining hall, noticed that, oh, they were still alive. Maybe they all got poisoned. Like together, and then they just mutilated the bodies afterwards. However, the witnesses don't believe she was killed with a gun. She probably was. And like they just shot him in the head, all of them except Maria, because Shannon has a relationship with Maria. So why do that? George shot in the head outside, pretty simple. I don't really need that much of an explanation, just shot in the head. Jessica, shot in her face. The problem is, why? Why everyone was going along with this whole plot. Because Jessica and Kyrie was going along with this plot as well. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense why they'd want to convince Battler. Maybe Shannon told him, like, hey, I want Battler to forget, pay for his sins. Because he's really, like an asshole. And, like, Kyrie's like, oh, I know how you feel. I married an asshole. And had an illegitimate child with an asshole. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why they were working together. Because it doesn't make sense why they would call and say, oh, believe in magic, just unconditionally, believe in magic. I'll be dead by the time you see this. Maybe she didn't plan on being dead. I mean, that's always a possibility. Didn't plan on fucking dying. Maybe it was like, yeah, you just won't see me, I'm dead. Make him think everyone's dead so that, he can, speak his mind truthfully and honestly without worrying that anyone's, like, watching. Something along those lines. And that would make sense, actually, now that I say that. About as much sense as I fucking can, right? So I think that's what happened. There was a lot of bullet holes around. Kyrie. I missed on purpose to tease her. God. I don't know, that just sounds so much like Leviathan. Jesus. And so I think, like, they shot around her. Trying to kill her. Maybe, like, doing that while Battler's on the phone to, like, make it more realistic. And then, like, on purpose shoot her in the head. And, like, once she finished her message. Who knows? Then we had the people who died outside as well. Kraus, shot in the head. Simple. Nanja, shot in the head. Simple. Kumasawa and Goda, I think they faked their hanging and that stuff. And, like, open the shutter and be like, oh, thank you, you're going to let us out. And, once he, like, gives the key over, shoots him in the head. Both of them. And then strung them up. Already on their nooses. And just to take advantage of it, he burned to death. Not surprising. Kanon, mysterious death, right? Therefore I guarantee his death. She was shot in the head, which would have been similar to how she died in the first or the third episode. I think she committed suicide over the well. Maybe, like, rigged the gun so it fires, hits her in the head, and then, like, or she just holds it. Like, she's standing over the well, just hold the gun and then fires. And, it just falls straight into the well. Down, disappears forever. And you don't have to worry about it. Something along those lines. Again, if I was Battler, I'd really investigate these bodies. Really look for, like, signs of why they died. How they died. So, and that's why, and I think Shannon killed herself last. Because it would make sense that she would die last. I don't think it's the order. Because they were very particular in saying that Kanon was the 9th victim. But it didn't say Shannon was. Which victim or whatever. No, it didn't say, was it the 9th? Yeah, 9th victim. So, I mean, I think it's interesting that they said what exact victim he was, but not saying when Shannon died. I think that's very important. Why not just say whenever anyone died? The fact that you don't say Shannon was the 10th or 11th victim makes it suspicious that you would say Kanon was the 9th victim. You can just say he died, in accordance with the epitaph. You don't have to go out of your way to prove it. And then he blows up. That's why his body is all like that. He blows up, he dies. Inhales a bunch of toxic gas. I love my steaks, goddamn. And that's how I explain everything so far. I'm sure it's gonna change within 10 minutes of the next episode, but that's how it always ends up. I think I explained everything kind of briefly. I kind of don't want to go on any longer. It's already been an hour and a half. My throat's fucking killing me now. If I am not unclear on something, please let me know. I'll reiterate it or clarify it in more specific terms. It's hard to tell what I am missing since I don't go off a script. I kind of just go off the top of my head, and just what I say is what I say. And so it's not exactly as well presented as it could be. I definitely could do it better, but I prefer doing things off the top of my head. I think it's easier and flows better. And that's everything. God. Shannon inherits the headship, feels betrayed by Battler. You know, it's looked down upon by everyone, creates a sense of, inferiority, creates another persona, or already had said persona in her head due to incestual relationships, which is what ultimately leads to this devastation and destruction. The sin is Battler not coming back. Oh, God. And that's about everything I can think of right now. And just a reminder, don't tell me if I'm right or wrong. Use Rot 13 if you want to discuss the spoilers. I mean, there's a fucking loads of other ways probably to explain it, probably even without some servants. I just think this is the easiest way too. I mean, you kind of have to have some backwards ass thinking involved, but it works. It works out and fits within the rules that the game's permitted and the game allows. I want them to define body or person, and that's when I'll know if I'm right or wrong. If they define it as a personality, that if a personality is a person, then I can't possibly win. Well, actually, no, both. I'd win and not at the same time. If they say a personality is a person, that means you could kill a personality and it works. The problem is it would increase the number of the people on the Rokinjima by too many, because it depends what they define as people on the island. Fuck me. Because if they say personalities equals persons and persons equals 17 on the island, no more, then in game 3 then there would have been 18, because Ava had her, witch personality or whatever inside of her. So that would increase it too much. So it can and can't be, person at the same time. It can't be one and the same. Oh no, there's a lot of things that I need. A lot of circumstantial evidence, a lot of things that could easily fall apart. But it's the easiest and most, I don't want to say obvious because it's not obvious at all. Least convoluted way I could explain everything, I would say, without having to really start pulling shit out of my ass and saying, oh, they actually have superpowers and is able to do this. Because there's very little ways you can get canon to show up without actually being canon. Because as they said, only canon can do that. Well, if canon and Shannon are one and the same, that would mean Shannon could do it. So, I think that's what I'm going to go with. It's my fucking theory. I'm going to stick with it. It's going to keep evolving, of course, because that's just how everything works, right? And, I don't know. I'm worried. 6 years is... I'm worried, man. I'm worried. God, I'm just really uncertain about it. I really am. The epitaph solution, wow, I was much more confident in. This is the one that I'm really shaky on. You could probably tell a tone difference from, like, me having a shit-eating grin while saying the epitaph solution in this one. This is a lot more indecisive. Fuck. Well, I'm gonna call it good. It's been an hour and a half. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for tomorrow because the next episode will probably be out. Probably. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. I'll apologize if it's a day late. It just depends how fast I can get up my recording setup to go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for all the support it's been getting. This series has been getting. It's been wonderful. And see you for the next half of Umineko. Oh, God. I'm nervous.